Hey, how's it going, everybody? JT here from the Ethfinance Community, live again, once again, from the EVMavericks Discord. If you haven't had a chance, check out that Discord. You can find it on the sidebar, Ethfinance on Reddit. It's a great little Discord. We do a little show every Friday. So if you're joining in on YouTube, welcome in. And make sure you smash the bell and punch the like button or whatever you're supposed to do for all these streams. Really helps us out in the algorithm wherever you are. So once again, my name is JT on behalf of the Ethfinance Community on Reddit. And here we go. Give us a thumbs. I already said that part. All right. So we don't have any guests this week, but we got a couple that we're going to mention in a little bit. But first, the Weekly Doots live stream is all about showcasing the best of the best from the week of Ethfinance that was. This is a read-along reaction series, and if you want to follow along, head to dailydoots.com, which is produced by our very own Hanniabu, and while you're at it, grab today's POAP. Big thanks to Tricky Troll for capturing these doots every single day, and to the A Word for curating this beloved weekly list. As always, if you know somebody that wants to jump in and get on a piece of this action, send them my way. And we're going to go ahead and jump right down onto our rich list for this week. Coming in at number 10, Hanniabu with 51 doots. Benito 2030 climbing up to 53. Scientist at 55. K-Brot, Steady Eddie at 60. Set One Less at 61. And 696 underscore ETH at 63. Tricky Troll at 67. Cryptowow Currency at 69. Wow, 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 wow. He had a double. Actually, he got a double doot this last week. He's absolutely on fire. Logri the Bard climbing up to 76. And Super Fizz has returned and now has 118. So if you follow along at dailydoots.com, we can go straight into the Trinity. The announcements. Okay, so the Gitcoin grants round closed. Let me see. I got to refresh this because he updated this. That was from last week. That round is closed. Thanks to all the contributors. The announcements, don't believe Lido's lies. Stay tuned for details. So this one is coming straight from Hanny, huh? All right, so we got a couple of upcoming guests here, and straight away, September 8th, we're going to be talking to the team from Lantern Finance. I had a chance to talk to them recently, and you can too. They are specifically looking for people off of Ethfinance and the EVMavericks, as well as, any other people in the space that have had any luck staking. What did you like? What did you didn't like? They're doing basically their own research. We'll talk about that later on. And they are a KYC American-based staking provider. I really like the direction that they're going. We'll get into that later. September 15th, Greg DePrisco from, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, Anya Labs. Maybe AJ and Ace can correct me if I'm mispronouncing this. By the way, if you're sitting on the Public Voice channel and you got something you want to add, you can chime in. Just unmute yourself and talk over me. We'll get going. Anya Labs is a non-custodial, peer-to-pool, permissionless lending, borrowing, and trading system that requires no governance or external price feeds to function. There's going to be a lot to unpack on that that meeting that we're going to have here on the 15th. I don't have them added for September 22nd, but I ran into a guy from Africa. It's a blog post that I did for the Regen Library. I actually found them in the Gitcoin round. What this guy does is he's produced something called Ubi Protocol, which is it basically helps connect small farmers in Africa to be able to stream into the major distribution channels, especially in the Sahel region of Africa, which is like a belt of land that stretches from the west coast to the east coast in Africa that sits right on the southern edge of the Sahara Desert. And so there's not only that, but they're tied into a whole lot of other groups that are doing a lot of work towards what's called the Great Green Wall. And I'm going to try to get an education for everybody on what that is. But basically, there's an initiative by a bunch of different countries and philanthropists to rebuild the desert into the tropical forest, or at least arable farmland once again. And it's able to be done. It's something that can be done, and they're finding some success. But more importantly, their mission is to help small farmers in these impoverished regions figure out a way to bring them to market using the blockchain. So that'll be hopefully September 22nd. And I'm going to see if I can get a couple of those people to join the call. But anyway, all right, so let's get back into it. The Morning Trinity, Splinter Cole says Ethereum, and you got Trisomy 21 crabbing away at $1,648.696 underscore ETH is clocking in at 6.3 on the ratio. All right, a weekly haiku by J.S. Tears. How do they do it? The charts start to bend. Hello, candle, my old friend. The pullbacks will mend. Boy, was that not a Bart Simpson of a day or what? It seemed like, oh, Grayscale they beat the SEC at their lawsuit. I think it was Grayscale. And then it was like insta candle, and then it took like 48 hours to retrace the entire pump. Boy, it's like it never even happened. All right, the Q via Space Cider, your daily beacon chain dose active validator 765,591, up 2,071. Pending validators joining 54,000, and the amount leaving roughly zero. The entry queue is down 400 from yesterday's number. It'll take around 21 days for the entry queue to clear. In around 8.5 days, the amount of daily validators that can both enter or exit will be increased from 2,475 to 2,700. These figures are based on the entry and exit queue at the time of posting and can also be tracked via validatorq.com, courtesy of our own Hanniabu. And now our ship post of the week. Here he is. He got duded on the weekly. Crypto Wow Currency. Zero knowledge proof explanations really be like example 1. Peggy plays a simple game with 2 colored balls. Or example 2. Peggy plays with a Where's Waldo book. Example 3. Oh, shit. Peggy calculates the solutions hash in the last round, i.e. h blah, blah, blah equals 0515. She then rewrites it as a decimal number, i.e. 0515 equals 1301, and applies the mapping. For example, 1301 mod 27 equals 5. She proceeds to translate 5 to row I equals 6 for the next query and adds the solution to row I equals 6, etc. To the proof string. Last, she attaches the hashes of the Merkle tree nodes needed to check whether the result matches the commitment to P. I don't think that was an explain like I'm 5. Oh my gosh. Great job, dude. Nice work. All right. I think that that pretty much rounds out all of our opening stuff. So, all right. So we're going to get right into this. First regular doot here. Harag doesn't accept the Lido narrative, and Nixo reiterates the kind of threat Lido poses. Oh, yes, definitely. Okay. Harag says, I find it the most interesting that the Lido narrative, there will only be one LST, and because of that, it is us, Lido, than even more centralized players. So is so readily accepted by many people. This narrative enables Lido to aggressively grow through dubious means like the Carpati, I'm going to mispronounce this partnership. Carpet Key manages, that's what it is. Carpet Key manages many large DAO treasuries, and apparently Carpet Key bought Steth with these treasuries and blocked adding other LSTs only after public outcry. Some DAOs intervened and now hold a more diverse LST portfolio. In my opinion, accepting this narrative makes people complacent and fall in line behind Lido because the alternative, for example, Binance dominating the staking market, is obviously a worse outcome. Lido propagates this statement because it helps them to justify their means. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, which again helps Lido. It is not surprising that Lido now aggressively spreads this narrative again on various platforms like Bell Curve Podcast, Bankless, and Twitter. Lido is well connected, and they can place their narrative quite effectively in this space. Does the narrative actually make sense? At the core, the narrative is the dominant, quote, the dominant LST has the most integrations and the largest network effect, end quote, and due to this, all ETH will flow to it. In essence, it reduces the complexity of staking products to one or two quantities and argues the end state lies at the edge. For example, one dominating LST. This pushes people into becoming convex thinkers, which in this case helps Lido to divide up the market. You either support us or you support big centralized exchanges. The simplicity of the narrative to me is similar to some very simplified arguments by hobby economists, which are then surprised that actual market data contradicts them. They then argue that people are not rational actors, but what actually happens is they dumb down the complexity of a system to a level which makes it easily calculable, but the outcome of this simplified system does not match reality anymore because they unknowingly removed some essential mechanics. Even the market itself does not support the Lido narrative if you look at market data like the recent Glassnode Insights report. Lido grew by 54%, Jesus, since January, and Rocket Pool's RETH grew by 157%. How is this even possible? Because I thought according to their narrative, they would win automatically because of network effects. RETH is by pretty much all quantifiable means an inferior product, lower network effect, lower liquidity, fewer integrations, and lower yield. People now even pay a premium to own RETH. Is it because people are stupid? I would argue that the simple convex thinking of the Lido narrative removed a lot of the actual complex decision-making of market participants, and that is why the Lido narrative should at least be questioned or even rejected outright. But why does Lido dominate? They were the first LST, making staking accessible for everyone. They are less centralized than Binance, Coinbase, and Kraken. They did not really have any competition in the market until about 1 year after the Beacon Chain launch when Rocket Pool started. And now there are alternatives, some better, some worse, and new entrants will come. Sure, due to historical reasons, Lido will be the largest LST for years to come. But I am personally not convinced that they will inevitably reach 90% market share because of network effects alone. And now to a more personal note. Does it make a difference for me to buy an LST from an established player compared to a new entrant? Yes, definitely. Storing my ETH in a tested smart contract has its value. Having access to degen plays is great, but being able to borrow money against my LSTs is necessary. But does it make a difference if the established player has over 30% dominance or 3%? Not really. Our ETH has enough liquidity and integrations for me, with just about having 4% of the staking market share. The marginal utility of network effects of a larger LST protocol is already pretty close to zero, and other parameters like systemic risk and more become more important. Nixo replies, to reiterate something that seems confusing to casual users, Lido's threat is not a threat on top of Ethereum. It's not about centralizing the economy running on top of it. It's not about a widespread smart contract risk, though it does add that too. This is what the strategy leader at Lido, Hasu, has laid out on his recent Bankless episode. Number 1, solo staking will trend down to less than 1% of the network. Number 2, liquid staking is the superior form of staking, and all staking will migrate there. Number 3, LSTs will converge to a single LST. The result of this is that 99% of Ethereum's validators are controlled by Lido. That means that that Ethereum is governed by the Lido DAO. The Lido DAO can choose to censor, blacklist, or finalize whatever they want on the chain. They become vulnerable to government pressure or human corruptibility to do these things. They can pressure their very small operator set to do these things in the shadows, especially once forced exits are implemented. This fundamentally changes what Ethereum is. It becomes the Lido DAO chain. Might as well use BNB chain at that point. Ethereum's validator set is absolutely core to its decentralization, permissionless, and credible neutrality. And before anybody else chimes in, and I hope you do, Nixo hits it out of the freaking park on that one. And I mean, you think Lido's a threat? Wait till BlackRock gets into Lido's back pockets. You know what I mean? Like this, it's true. Like I can feel it, you know, it's sick. We got to fix it. We got to diversify it somehow. Anybody else want to chime in, please?
I think this was probably the big topic for the week that I've seen being discussed. Just because Lido hit that magic 33% number is really creeping up close, getting up there to it. So censorship, yes, they could they can kind of decide what the longest chain is. That's kind of an issue, right? And certainly because they have the validator sets, they can prevent the chain from reaching finality if they want to for some reason. We talked a little. There was another discussion that wasn't part of the Weekly Doots on like what exactly happens if they decide to exercise that, and what type of bug they could introduce. Like if we were to introduce a bug in a majority like Geth client that Lido forced on all their validators, what could you do with that? Like could you corrupt all the databases of them and force all the entire Lido network offline, then lose 80% of the ETH validators? Things like that are fun, and it might not. It might be in something like the ETH routing logic. Or what happens if the Lido governance token gets some type of like inflation bug in it, and so someone's able to mint 3 times as much Lido. So now they own the Ethereum network, right? It's not even just that the validators are going to conspire to do something evil, or that top level pressure is going to, from like a government, is going to cause a big problem. But even innocuous errors of the type of stuff we see happen in smart contracts all too often, right? Basically now the Ethereum consensus layer is dependent on a smart contract, a single smart contract, right? And like that is just obviously not a very resilient state for what's supposed to be the global settlement network for nation states and things in the future, right? The arguments I've seen against it is saying like, well, yes, but they're running the validators, or they're not running the nodes, and so they can't like fork an illegal state transition or something. They can only like capture MEV and do other sort of annoying things with nothing really bad. And I don't agree with that take. I think that by the time they'd get done with one of those issues, it will have irrevocably damaged Ethereum's reputation. It's one of the few things that could actually cost us like a market position to a competitor with a different tech stack, right? Like probably won't be Solana because how many times they go offline, but just whatever tomorrow's L1 is with whatever technical upgrades it has. Some new L1 comes out that's purely ZK snark and like allows you to program in C# or whatever, and has data availability that like you can dial the number of nodes that you have on it, whatever tomorrow's gimmick is, right? Ethereum retains its market position in a large part with not the cutting edge tech on a lot of things, because it just does not fuck up. It has been up with like 100% uptime since ever, right? And I would hate to see all of that work from all of those devs over a decade, and everything that we're putting into go down the drain because of like a one-line bug in a single smart contract written by Lido.
It's just like it's the 900-pound ninja gorilla in the room right now, and not enough people are seeing it. what a, you know, anybody can build on Ethereum, and here we are. And so we got to be resilient. We got to figure out how to get that diversification going. I think Nixo just, she figured out a way to put it in some words. You can look at the real damage that could be done is very, very much to the core of the project. If
Yeah,
continues
it's
down
to the
the
core of the
path.
project, which just means it's to the core of Lido as well, right?
Yeah.
This is a threat to the value underpinning the Lido network as well. Like they are their own worst enemy. I think that the fat head thesis has some issues, including like those who are underrepresented in the market have a higher incentive to do marketing, right, and peel things off. You see like vampire tax like Lidont being a good example. You see things like stablecoins. Why wouldn't the same argument apply for USDC or USDT? Why do we have 3 or 4 or 100 stablecoins, right? I think that we see the market becoming more fragmented on those things. Now we have stablecoins based on LSTs like Gravitas and various liquidity forks for some reason, and Rye being a different fork, and it Curve USD being another recent one, Ghost from Aave being another recent one. Like these things all have millions of dollars market cap, and it over time kind of fragments into a long tail. Even if the head is still greater than 33% of the total, right? It still fragments into a long tail rather than saying, well, it's going to basically concentrate down to 100% or near 100% on one because that's where the quote network effects are. I'm sure that you could make the same argument for, well, okay, now that we have this fractured head, someone's going to come out with a basket of LSTs, right? And then we're going to all, like, it's silly just to have all the liquidity in Uniswap as base ETH that's not earning interest. So all of that over time is going to become some form of liquid staking token. But why fragment it when we could make a basket token like Set Protocol or like Yearn's YETH, and then everyone pairs against that? And every person making that basket is going to make that argument because it's bullish for them, right? So Lido is pushing a narrative that's obviously bullish for Lido. The
Hmm.
facts really don't bear it out for ETH, for LSTs, for stablecoins, or anything we've seen in the market, really, right? Um, I guess it makes more sense when you're dealing with things like phones, which there's hardware and a very large like end-to-end stack. But making a decentralized liquid staking pool, just making a liquid staking pool, is not that much work, especially when the source code is available from the people that come before you, right? So it's not like it's the same amount of work as being the next Microsoft or being the next Google. There's not that same moat.
Hey, Nick, so were you going to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to I wanted to add some nuance to this. It's not like Lido is one big company that we're that is a threat in and of itself. Like so there are 29 operators for Lido, and those operators, the more operators that they have, the more decentralized that protocol itself is. And that protocol is a capital efficient, great liquid staking protocol. The problem is that the Lido DAO influences everything that those operators do, especially once forced exits are implemented, which is on the roadmap, is going to happen. Um, the withdrawal address is set to the Lido contract, which is controlled by the DAO. So if operators are asked to do something, they say no, the Lido DAO will essentially be able to say, well, then you're not a Lido operator anymore. We're going to force exit you. You are going to lose a huge chunk of your income. And as we've seen, like Lido is pretty uniform on the way that it votes because the top token holders in that DAO are have so much weight. So I just saw a Twitter post a couple hours ago by Dr. Nick A that compared how many voters when Lido was asked to vote on whether or not they were going to self-limit, it was a 99.8% no. But if you look at how many voters and don't token weight voted to self-limit Lido, it was actually like 40% of voters voted to self-limit. So the Lido DAO is controlled by a few top token holders, and that is an essential failure right now of the the DAO structure. DAOs are an experimental technology. They do not solve the problems that we're looking to solve. They are basically a beta mode of like what we can do with blockchain and how we can empower people, but they are not mature enough to solve the problems that we need to solve. And Lido being controlled by the DAO becomes a huge issue when, even if they have 1,000 operators, that DAO, that one DAO, and the few top token holders in the DAO control what those operators can do.
Can you elaborate on what it takes to be a Lido DAO operator?
So the Lido operators are the people who are running the validators. Those are not necessarily connected to or part of the DAO. The Lido DAO is all the token holders in Lido they all delegate their tokens to a few people who are in charge of voting with those tokens, or they can delegate to themselves. But like in every DAO, you get some tokens, and then you delegate to who you think will represent your interests best. And in DAO governance, that ends up mostly looking like a lot of very disinterested voters saying like, I don't care, I don't need to keep up with this. Why don't you guys just make sure my token keeps being worth something? Yeah. And so they check out. And they delegate to 1, 2, 3 people who mostly control all those votes.
So this is my question then, and I'm extrapolating down the road. I'm looking at in the U.S. particular. If we get a little bit of clarity with regulatory stuff, BlackRock enters the chat, Fidelity enters the chat. What's to stop them from purchasing a seat at that table to do the value capture? And then you get private enterprise capturing these monolithic groups within, the Ethereum ecosystem. I mean, I just feel like at some point, and the reason why I say this is because the value of the network and the fees and everything like that, the value is so tremendous that it wouldn't take those entities like Fidelity, BlackRock's of the world to incentivize people to continue to go with Lido and offer a premium that's even better than like they could get anywhere else, including the chain itself if they were a solo validator. You know what I mean? Like this is very... It looks like you don't have to do 51% shit if you got people already just offering up their ETH into these conglomerates, and then you got these DAO holders that can do all kinds of stuff, and then you have people purchasing a seat at the table. It's kind of like who gets to control the new version of the internet, and that's not that tinfoil of a hat scenario, is it? I mean, if they can fart out a few $1 billion and take your yield from 4% to 6% and lose money in the near term in order to value capture for the long term, you bet your ass they're going to do it. I don't see how they wouldn't.
I don't even think they have to do it that way. They just, buy up a bunch of Lido tokens. They have a seat at the table, right?
Well, there you go.
I mean, Vitalik wrote a post called Beyond Token Voting Governance or something that talks on this topic. My post on DeFi governance Endgame talks on this topic. The systems that we have are plutocratic, which are not going to withstand an inflow of capital from large established players like BlackRock.
Well, okay, that's excellent. That was a hell of a post by Harag and an incredible reply by Nixo. Put the link in the chat. I see I've got some friends from Palisades that have joined the chat. I know that this gets talked about a little bit over on their Discord, so I want to make sure they got in on this action. So welcome in Tuesday, Savory, Algo, Dujo, anyone else from...
Howdy.
Anybody else from Palisades, good to have you here. All right, we're going to move on down the list here. Alexis KEF educates us on the EIP 4844 with Domotheus' latest blog post on Blob Space. Blob Space 101 by Domothy, copy-pasting the author's own intro. This article aims to approach the concept of Blob Space from the ground up. We will go through a quick overview of the problem of scaling a blockchain and how the concept of Blob Space is the answer that Ethereum is betting on. then delve into the more technical aspects of blob space. First, from the perspective of EIP 4844, since it's about to roll out, and then we'll quickly look into what full dank sharding will entail in the future. And if I open up this link here, this is domothy.com/blob space. Well, he's got a whole wiki set up here talking about what blob space 101 is. So this is pretty lengthy. I'm not going to read all this, but if you want to check it out, great job to one of our own Mavericks, Domothy, for contributing to Blob Space 101. This was published August 25th last week. So thank you very much. I'll put this in the chat if you're not following along on dailydoots.com. And good catch. Thank you. Let's see. Seek Soldiers comments on comparisons made between Lido and Bitcoin mining pools. Seek Soldiers is Jasper, right? That's what I have my notes as. It's Jasper. I don't know if it's Jasper, the friendly ghost.
Yeah, that's Jasper.
Yes.
Wish he was in here.
He's in here?
No, but I wish he was.
Would somebody ring out to him? All right. This was a response. Why don't we talk to him on a call sometime? He'd be fun. This was a response lower, but I think it merits a full text. Lido's situation often gets compared to the bleak Bitcoin mining pool situation, where 3 pools account for more than 75% of all hash power. That's a good point. I think the Lido situation is actually worse than Bitcoin mining pools. Switching hash power between pools is easy. Switching stake from one LST to another requires the entry and exit queues, which are multiple months long, and thus entrench one. For example, if Lido went corrupt and started doing reorgs to steal MEV, then at the rate at which they lose stake is limited by Ethereum consensus. Further, there's actual economic irrationality to switch away, since Lido earns more in this paradigm, assuming no user activated slash. The point being is that there are no economics that inhibit mining pools, and this has been proved through voluntary self-limitations. Ethereum is struggling with this. Yeah. Anybody want to comment on that? But I think it's just another... It's another bagel. How do you say this wrong? Bagogel 12 created a dystopian Ethereum Lido theater script. Here we go again. Act 1, uncertainty unveiled. The scene, a bustling virtual realm resembling Ethereum's landscape. Characters, Lido, Operator A, Operator B, and DSA representative are present. What is DSA representative? Are present. Lido addressing the audience. This is Lido speaking. The enigma of the future looms over the Ethereum like a shadow. The path ahead is hazy as we navigate uncharted waters. Operator A whispering to Operator B. Have you heard the rumor about DSA's interference? Operator B nodding yes. Word is they want to certify operators with their software. It's like handing control to a new sheriff. Enter the DSA representative authoritatively. Ooh, I wonder if I can do. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the new era of certified staking. The divided state of America demands compliance with our guidelines. Only those who bear the badge of, quote, certified operators shall stake and govern the network. And here goes Act 2, compliance and consequence. I'm sorry, I didn't know this was going to be an epic shitpost. The scene. Lido's assembly hall. Lido and a group of operators are in a discussion, and Lido says, "We stand at a crossroads. DSA's decree is clear, and we must decide how to respond." Operator A raising hand. What about those of us who don't wish to comply with DSA's terms? Lido gets real serious. Dissent is a luxury we can't afford. Compliance is the path we've chosen for now. Operator B angrily. So we relinquish our autonomy to become mere pawns? Lido solemnly says, our choice is stark, yet we must weigh the consequences. And the operators mumble amongst themselves, mumbling. Act 3, The shadows of cartelization. The scene is Ethereum's digital realm depicting bustling stakers and traders. Operator A defiantly, I can't ignore my principles. I'm unstaking. Operator B is worried, but the queue to restake is overwhelming, not to mention the enticing profits we'd be leaving behind. Lido, observing with a sinister grin, as DSA grips tighten, chaos unfolds. Operators reluctantly withdraw, some out of principles, others due to sheer inconvenience. And the narrator, the Ethereum ecosystem stands at a precipice as Lido's influence swells, furthering the consolidation of power. Lido's dominance continues to grow, its ominous shadow looming larger over Ethereum. Operator A, in a resolute tone, we can't let this tyranny persist. A fork is our last resort. Operator B is doubtful, but Lido's stranglehold is formidable, and with DSA support, Lido faces a pivotal decision: embrace cartelization or confront dissent. Lido's calculating, the road ahead is murky, but our grip on power is undeniable. Ethereum shall bend to our will. And the curtain falls, shrouding Ethereum's future in an unsettling darkness of cartelization and control. Damn, dude, that's a hell of a shit post. That was like an entire play. I suck at voice acting, I think. All right.
I mean, in the long term, the queue can't just like be 30 days long indefinitely, right? Like in the long term, the queue has to basically be zero entrance, zero exit, unless there's some like new pressure applied on the market. Am I delusional in this? Like, it's kind of like the ETH TPS on average shall be 16. Like the entrance queue and exit queue must be 0 on average.
I feel like that's actually the benefit of Ethereum versus Bitcoin. I know that the previous conversation was saying that Bitcoin was better, but we can actually unstake. I feel like the vast majority of people who participate in a mining pool have checked out. So I mean, I don't know. I think that the Bitcoin pools are worse.
So what's the primary concern? Is the primary concern here that one Lido gets too big, we get Byzantine fault tolerance, thresholds, we hit those? Or is it that Lido is already acting in a way that people are concerned about?
I have not heard any concern of any type of bad behavior from Lido to date. I've never heard
Lido
that. I've never heard.
Lido needs to vote to be able to do anything, so you have time ahead. Whereas,
that's the thing, right?
A Bitcoin mining pool, there's no voting.
Yeah, because I mean, like that's ultimately the question. Because like if we're doing the BlackRock comparison, the reason that BlackRock is a concern is because people buy ETFs that BlackRock has, and BlackRock, as per the current regulatory scheme, is not required to pass those voting rights to you. You give them your money.
Yep.
They keep your money, and then they in return get the votes, right?
Yep.
So the question then becomes is Lido similar, or can Lido make an action without the DAO? Like, is the DAO completely separate, or is this like you have voting rights in a company and then it goes from there? So ultimately, you're never going to be able to get rid of large actors. That's just not going to happen. Like, so whether these people were all setting up their own nodes or not, you could theoretically also make the case that people who have votes via the Lido DAO actually have more representation than if everyone, including these very wealthy people anyway, were just solo mining, because then they would have all the representation, you'd have none because you couldn't afford to do it.
So I think it's you're right that it's skewing voting representation towards the Lido token, but I think in terms of if you're saying you give BlackRock your ETH, they keep the votes of your ETH, and then they hold or escrow it for you or whatever. That's basically what's happened with Lido. I create ST ETH, and then I have no say in how my ST ETH is used in a validator run by Lido. The people who have that say have been transferred to the Lido DAO votes, which reduces the monetary attack surface from $250 billion to the market cap of Lido. Right?
Yeah.
So that is orders of magnitude less secure just from a capital perspective than having Ethereum as the, ultimately the liquidity depth of Ethereum being the security of the network. And I mean, I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very valid concern. The question is it like what's the alternative, right? Because obviously there needs to be an alternative, and I know there's other staking pools. You got Rocket, you got a few other smaller ones, right? But like, how do you ensure that there isn't a power law winner in this space?
Okay, so what you can do, there's some options I've seen that are small that have been put forth. One is that as they increase the maximum deposit size, or whatever that thing's called, do you know what I'm talking about? There's an EIP for this.
Oh,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, so it's now pumped the maximum way over 32.
Right. So that there's capital efficiency in using larger than 32 number, right? And with that capital efficiency, you also get a very weak form of Sybil identity, right? A single actor holding 32 versus 100 people holding 32 today. You have no idea. Like, a validator is just a thread in like a Linux node somewhere, right? It doesn't represent an entity or like an independent rational actor or anything. As you increase that number, you at least get some sense that the person with 32,000 ETH in their validator, wherever they set the cap to, is at least a single acting entity, right? And there's capital efficiency in doing that. So the network could use the size of the node in order to change something like your relative amount you get when you're the validator for a block. They could play with the capital efficiency gain there in order to offset that. That's one thing they could do. Now, if you do it too much, then everyone just continues to use 32 validators. So there's just this like minor sweet spot that you can potentially tinker in. The other thing that we can do as an industry is we can. I think that when liquidity gets into these LSTs, a lot of people are just whatever yield it works, right? So we can make the other competitors as UX friendly as possible. So this would be things like good Zapper style smart contracts that allow you to easily migrate liquidity from one LST to another without just selling it on one market, but like through an actual redemption and mint process. I know that teams like Lidont are working on systems like that. There are potential things you can do with bribe markets, where you just have to figure out where the budget for it comes from. But insofar as like it's an attack on the public good, you have to figure out, okay, here's the value of this type of defense. And I don't care if it's Gitcoin or something else, but you turn into a bribe market game where transferring your liquidity to a minority provider and locking that for some time comes with increased yield through some type of bribe market that looks like Curve. So I don't think there is no actionable thing that you can do. I think that there are things we're playing with, right? And we don't know which one's going to be most effective or sellable to the ecosystem at large. Right now, it's ringing alarm bells. Hey, this is a problem. And to the degree that we can agree that it's a problem and at least form that at layer 0, we can start to discuss different solutions and start to have the longer form dialogue of like, well, here's what we can put into an EIP, or here's what we can form as a counter Lido DAO, and like collectives, like sort of anti-cartel, unions can form together and start to take action. But I have heard people say, well, we'll just socially slash Lido or something. Like, I think that is I don't think that's going to work well. I don't think that's going to get off the ground. So I think there are some very ineffective actions I've heard championed. And then I think there are some minor things that need more expansion or discussion. But I don't think that I'm suggesting no action or like, oh, we just have to give it all to Coinbase or something, right?
Yeah, just be cognizant that it all exists and it needs to be discussed wide openly and loudly. I really hope that we can get some consensus going amongst people that they got to vote with their dollar. It's go time. Hey, Jabrosef, your mic's hot. It's cutting in a little bit. Thank you, sir. Or lady. Looks like sir, I'm guessing.
Had you heard of any of those things I was talking about before, Keish? Do you have any comments on any of those?
Yeah, I was just intellectually trying to get up to speed with the conversation.
Okay, great.
I think
those things are pretty cool. FYI, all the different things are being tried to kind of curtail Lido's dominance, Lido being a big one. And I kind of had an idea, maybe some other protocol out there is currently looking to do this, but create like a slush fund of our ETH or, Frax ETH or whatever. And say you give a little bonus for people who swap, air quotes here, swap their ST ETH for the R ETH. And the ST ETH will normally go through the normal, withdrawal process, but they're able to get their R ETH equivalent with a bonus still sprinkled in right away. And you just got to make sure you always have a bit of a slosh fund in there so people get their R ETH right away while the Lido stake these over time and gets withdrawn out of the protocol and then back into Rocket Pool or something like that.
Yeah, that's like I was saying with the zappers. You lower the UX penalty of migrating out of Lido to make it less sticky. And then you just give people incentives, which I think is marketing budget, bribes, style things. I think those are all very cool ideas. We just have to figure out the funding source for it. Like, does it need to be a public good? Does it need to be just tokens from alternatives like Rocket Pool? Do they need the ODAO funds to bribe, or is it? And then you have systems like Yearn's ETH, which is like a basket of ETH, right? They've got like a bribe system potentially built into there. So we're playing with alternatives, right? At the moment, they all just look very premature. But I'm glad that the alarm bells are ringing. We're having serious discussions on this. Like, this is the big topic this week.
Very good. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it for now. We can always hang out after happy hour in the hotel lobby. Try to keep these at about an hour long. I'm going to move on down the list. Definitely want to encourage people to stick around because the more we talk about it, the more we can coordinate some ideas and, come up with some ideas for the Mavericks to shout out, onto Ethfinance and come up with some kind of a way that maybe our little tiny subreddit could have its voice. So, all right, very good. Moving on down the list, dailydoots.com. Tricky Troll defends Gitcoin while user STRTRD, straight tard. I don't know what that, hope I didn't say that wrong. I'm thinking we'll just spell it out and not use that word. Brings in the context behind the post along with some of their own thoughts. So Tricky Troll says this comment was a reply made on a comment with little attention at the end of yesterday's daily. So I'm going to share it now. Basically, in light of people complaining that, quote, Gitcoin lost its way, unquote, often pointing to the use of money from Shell Oil in one funding round and another controversy around funding for minority groups in the ecosystem, here's my counter argument. Excuse me. One could argue that Gitcoin is doing what it was designed to do as a protocol. It's supposed to be modular for many different types of funding rounds with many different organizations, funding from Shell, funding for minority demographics, etc. This is all controversial due to your subjective opinion on what you want Gitcoin to be. Well, the Gitcoin vision was for it to grow up and become a protocol for all, not to remain a niche technical Ethereum native app, much like how there are many Linux distros for whatever niche you want. This is a feature and not a bug. Just because I don't like the fact that Ubuntu exists and adds telemetry to an ecosystem which is generally much more private than other operating systems doesn't mean I see Ubuntu or Linux as a failure. Of course not. Ubuntu invites newbies into the ecosystem, and if they want to progress from there, they can. Meanwhile, there are privacy-focused distros and ones which stick to core OG Linux community values. Same goes for Gitcoin. And then the whole context comment, let's see, user STRTRD, and the counter argument. Let's see if we're going to do all this or not. Argument, Stovey, Phi Martel, Tricky Troll. I missed it. Maybe I'm missing the context here on the format. There's the whole thread. And Kenya user Kenaya, I don't know. Counter argument. I do not know what the OP thinks, but if you want to focus on the negative, I have a few points. It took them a year to revamp their website, which is only now usable again. They spent a lot of effort to have Gitcoin rounds on Phantom, which barely had any useful things to support instead of integrating L2s. Basically had anything useful to support instead of integrating L2s. The last rounds were therefore super expensive to contribute. Only now they support optimism. The last few rounds were invite only, which probably hurt new devs and teams because they were excluded from Gitcoin. At the start of this round, all DAI contributions failed. Some people lost quite a bit of money with failed transactions, and the website said donation successful. If you look at the earliest failed transactions, they were probably from the Gitcoin team. They knew about the problem and still enabled DAI contributions. No idea why. Why waste developers' time on running your own L2, the PGN networks? It does not make sense to me. We have enough good L2s by now. Why make your own? The whole Shell collaboration was a PR disaster. Oh, I'm going to go back to the previous thing. The public goods network. They're talking about PGN as public goods network. So why waste developers' time on running your own L2, which is the PGN network? I think the reason they were doing that was if you use the public goods network, gosh, I hope I don't misquote this. The way I understand it is if you use PGN network, the transaction fees, a portion of that went also into the pool for the Gitcoin round or something like that. Like the fees were getting sloughed off into another wallet for use for public goods. It was like the more you use the network, the more those transaction fees added up to more public goods stuff. Okay. So I think that's why they did that. That's my only reserved answer on that from a personal standpoint. But to their point, we have enough good L2s, but why now make your own? Okay, now, the whole Shell collaboration was a PR disaster. There was also a diversity round in spring where one of the judges also had a project in the round. This round was special, and the judges had extra power over who gets the money. This judge was a very controversial figure in the space already, and they nevertheless took her on. The whole situation was a PR disaster. Diversity round. I don't know what that is. But yeah, anytime I see diversity round, sometimes I feel like other people are not going to be diverse. All of these points above tell me there is a lack of control, oversight, and quality standards in the Gitcoin organizational structure. With all the list of negative points, I have to say personally, I still love Gitcoin rounds. The website is now so much better than last year. They are, in my view, a pillar of our space, and I love donating to projects I use. Okay, I'd like to touch on Gitcoin, their passport, in which they are trying to become decentralized proof of humanity anti-Sybil standard while constantly changing stamps to accommodate whatever new KYC grab your ETH shady project they partner with, like proof of humanity, civic, etc. Other stamps are connected to your social networks like Sybil's have problems with that. One of the stamps is GTC staking. Stake our coin to prove you're a human? ? Complete antithesis to Web3, and it's getting a lot of praise. I'd love to see if there's other people that have opinions. I'll just say this, from my opinion is the round 18 was super easy to donate to different groups. I mean, it was really pretty flawless, and I know that hasn't always been the case. So it's kind of like, on one hand, if you're upset that Shell Oil's giving money to public goods, and if you're upset about the passport thing or whatever, I mean, yeah, there's reasons to be upset. But overall, the core of the site is much more fluid now than it's ever been for doing the things you want to do. So I'm a supporter of what they're trying to do. I don't necessarily agree with everything that's happening, but at the same time, it's kind of like take the good with the bad. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that or has any opinions. Otherwise, I'll move on. So good job. That was a good post.
Yeah, I don't.
ahead.
I was going to say, I don't understand why anyone would have an issue with a censorship resistance platform receiving donations from Shell.
Yep.
Take the cash. Why would you discriminate?
It's a greenwashing thing, I guess, in their eyes. It's dirty money. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. If you want to characterize this very negatively, I'll just play devil's advocate.
Yes,
It's
please.
like, do you want the blood money, right?
Yeah.
Like
Welcome to
reason
crypto.
that the only reason that Shell is doing this isn't because they're actually trying to save the world and make the environment a better place. The fiduciary duty of their board of directors literally prevents that from being legal. So instead, you have them using this to try and like fix their reputation, so that like democratic, governments don't clamp down on them, right? But it's like, can I use the blood money to help pay for your funeral or something?
Right.
It's like, yeah, we destroyed the earth, but can we like buy some flowers and put it over its grave? Like, oh, fuck you, man.
Well, I mean, like taking the other side, would you rather them keep the money and continue to use it to destroy the earth? Like, look, if you're in a battle of some sort, and your enemy actually drops, a crate of ammunition on your side, you're not gonna catapult it back to them and say, no thanks, we're not taking your blood ammo.
Well, I know certain political parties in the U.S. have done exactly that. I'm looking at Florida right now, right? So there's a history of stupidity, and people. This is obviously an issue of principle for some people, not an issue of like rational actors doing the optimal rational thing for their cause. But from the perspective of why is there outrage, it's principled people who are saying this tarnishes the Gitcoin brand by association. And I don't want to be be careful of like who your bedfellows are, right? So there's
absolutely, but at the same time, it's on Gitcoin to attract the people that it wants, right? So like,
yeah.
if it can't do that, then the other question has to be asked: why are we failing to attract the audience and the money that we seek to acquire?
Absolutely. And to be fair, I am just parroting arguments I've heard. I'm not in favor of what I'm suggesting. But when you say why would it happen, I'm just trying to give some context as why would that happen? What are the arguments being made against taking the money? I do know that the original contracts that Shell wanted to have on the money were horrendous. Like they wanted to be able to have final say on what projects receive the donations. They wanted to be able to claw back the funds if necessary.
Yeah, you're right.
They like it. So the Gitcoin went through weeks of revisions with their lawyers, like cutting out all of the stuff that was like, oh, you have to register a new bank account. I think they actually did that one. You have to register a new clean bank account so we can transfer the money there, and we want to have clawbacks on that money. We want to have oversight on final like veto power on whoever receives it, and all this stuff that was like counter to Gitcoin itself.
Yeah, you're right. The Gitcoin team, there was one particular member that posted on Twitter that just basically acknowledged we can see that we screwed up, but here's what we did. And basically went through and listed all the legal stuff that they stripped out of the original agreements and how they had to go back and forth. And they basically whittled the Trojan horse down into like a hobby horse, So it was, they weren't able to get all that. They would have they were trying to apply big corporate exec kind of style, stuff.
They were trying to say, look, I've got a pile of money and it comes with strings attached.
That's right.
Then Gitcoin had to go and snip a bunch of strings in order to get down to something palatable. But I think the original internet community, I think crypto in general attracts a lot of very principled people, and for good or ill. In this case, it means that those principled people lashed out when there was some outrage. And I think that when the context became clear of exactly how much work Gitcoin had done to make this go well, that lessened some of the outrage. My feedback on this was perhaps it happens too quietly. You have a governance layer, and if you had an inkling that something was going to be contentious, you have delegates. There's not that many of them, but they could have gone on Twitter and they could have gone on, come on here, right? Like, come on to Bankless, whatever, have a discussion on it. But it just seemed to come out of nowhere. Like suddenly, Gitcoin is taking all this money from Shell, and people were like, wait, what? And then there's a bunch of outrage where if you have I'm not saying it wasn't a lawful action or something. I'm saying if you're going to have a DAO with delegate voting, it is kind of the job of those delegates to have public outreach for things that they think might be contentious, right? It's in their own interest to not like piss off people delegating to them. And so the fact that it happens so quietly implies that delegate layer, that public outreach layer, wasn't working as intended.
So Shell.com has, and I'm putting it out of here right now, they do have like a blockchain initiative ongoing. So they have different articles, and they're somewhere in there in the blockchain. They have been, if I remember correctly, I think they made it a press release a few years ago. Remember when companies would join the Ethereum, what was it called, the Ethereum Foundation, or what was it called? I don't even remember. Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and it was like the price would jump up $100 or $20 or something. Now it's like companies are actually actively looking at blockchain technologies, and I'm wondering if people kind of miss this piece, is that they are in the industry a little bit, but we don't know to what level or what degree. I mean, a lot of these companies are keeping their cards close to their chest. I think they're all trying to figure it out just the way we're trying to figure it out, how to apply it. But yeah, you can imagine that Shell's going to be using blockchain for, tracking barrels of oil as they fall overboard in the ocean or whatever we're doing. All right. We got 3 more. It's 12 o'clock my time. So we're going to keep rocking and rolling. Lantern Finance shares their projects for those who find solo staking a bit too daunting. Shout out to the EVMavericks Lantern Finance, because his team is built. Oh, I wrote this. Oh, they didn't put my name in here. Okay, so this is something I wrote. Let me give a little bit of backstory. So Lantern Finance, the guy that runs it was actually at HodlerCon in Hawaii. I met him in real life. And so anyway, they're building a staking option for people. And I really think they are, I feel like they're right down the middle of the road where I would like to see staking providers go for people that are having trouble becoming solo stakers or Rocket Pool, whatever. Shout out to, this is me shouting out user Lantern Finance. I had them make a new username because their old one was shadow banned. Don't know why, and he doesn't know why either. He probably shared something from like Zero Hedge or something, because Zero Hedge is like shadow banned across Reddit, and then Reddit just gets stupid about accounts. But anyway, because his team is building something I think many of you and should be interested in if solo staking scares the shit out of you. If you live in any of these states, and there's a list of states: California, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Virginia, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Missouri, Wisconsin, Colorado, South Carolina, Utah, the great state of Kansas, New Hampshire, Montana, and Wyoming. If you live in any of those states, they are launching in October, and they're looking for early people in those states to talk to about participating in a feedback session. Right now, though, they want to talk to folks about their journey, history, and get some feedback on their current experiences, struggles with staking. They are doing staking as a service. Here's the pitch. They're doing staking as a service using KYC through Persona, a custody through BitGo, so they can also have insurance. And they're building a simple and effective US-based service, complete with tech support and phone support, etc. They have onboarded a team of around 8. Super easy to talk to. I hope some of you can line up a quick meeting. Highly recommend, even if you're not from those states. They want to talk to basically anybody and everybody that's connected to Ethfinance or Mavericks for sure, because that's their home. I'm definitely joining the early feedback cohort in October. So reach out to them, Prince at Lantern Finance and Jung at Lantern Finance. So my overall impression with them is this in a nutshell. They are not trying to be the Swiss Army salad of staking, right? They are doing very straightforward, staking. You don't have to have 32 ETH, but they're going to use BitGo as a custodian, and they're going to have a UI, and they're going to do KYC, and they're going to follow the rails. They are not going to be, as far as I know, their whole mantra is not to be trying to get too crazy into the weeds of like, I was even asking them about like Kraken. Remember when Kraken had staking and then SEC shut them down? And it turns out that Kraken wasn't just taking your ETH and staking it. They were staking a portion of it and then using the rest of it for other things, right? As a fund. Okay, this place is not wanting to do that. If you're staking, that's what you're doing with their protocol is staking. There's not any other things on the back burner like DCG, Genesis crap with the earn program and all that stuff. They're straight down the middle of the road. I think they quoted me that they're going to be something like 15%, which is cheaper than Coinbase. So that's good. And then it's going to cover all the cost of, the custody and the insurance and whatnot. So at least have a conversation with them. Just shoot them an email. Tell them JT sent you. I'm not, I'm excited about it. I think everybody's going to need to do their own research. They're very receptive. They want to talk to you. They want to know what you want, what you don't want. And I told them, man, just make it very stripped down, easy and straightforward. And I'm a customer. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that, but take a look at them. Lantern.finance, I believe, is their URL. Lantern.finance. Yeah. Okay. So there is a wait list here. And so they just want to get to talking first. And they're building out the UI right now. I think they're even going to have a mobile presence for monitoring stuff. Very good. I'll wrap that up. Good job. Coin Anon. User Coin. I love this. User Coin Anon breaks the good news, and Papazio adds some detail. Uniswap wins a lawsuit accusing them of being liable for scam tokens. Yeah, I remember this. This is good. So Papazio says this is dope. An important distinction between the smart contracts deployed by Uniswap and the actual token contracts and pools launched by the scammers. The judge concluded that Uniswap's contracts cannot be inherently illegal. The issue is with whomever made a scam token and then scammed people with it. Watch out, SEC. This is coming your way. Here's some choice bits. Judge Falia's decision said that smart contracts underlying the exchange's core functions should be viewed separately from code underpinning liquidity pools, which are drafted by token issuers and enable newly created tokens to trade. Quote, another quote, these foundational contracts are distinctive from the token contracts unique to each pool and drafted by issuers, Judge Falia wrote. The contracts relevant to plaintiffs' claims are not these overarching codes provided by defendants, but rather the pair or token contracts drafted by the issuers themselves. Very good. Excellent. That's a nice win. That's an under the radar win amongst the Grayscale win last week also. And Crypto currency to round out the show today. Wow, did he get 2 this week? He got double weekly dooted this week. Yep. He's on fire. Crypto currency. If you're not following him on Reddit, tag him. Becomes a full-on FUD fighter rebutting some claims made in a podcast. Here are the claims made about Ethereum between those timestamps and my rating for each one. Here's one of them. Quote, JP Morgan, this is like Snopes, isn't it? Crypto currency is like Snopes. JP Morgan owns a lot of crucial Ethereum infrastructure, unquote. This is mostly false. While JP Morgan does have some financial ties to Ethereum infrastructure, they don't, quote, own a lot, unquote. JP Morgan owns less than 10% of Consensus, the parent company for MetaMask, Infura, Besu, and Teku. Of course, while MetaMask and Infura are both influential and widely used, they are not the only games in town, and they are not, quote, crucial, unquote, to Ethereum survival. And while 10% may be enough to demand a board seat and sway some close votes, it's a far cry from owning, quote, infrastructure, in the sense that it's under their thumb. Here's the next one. JP Morgan dollarized the Ethereum network. False. Circle, USDC, and Tether, USDT, did the most to dollarize Ethereum, in my opinion. Circle is owned in part by the venture capital arms of several big banks, but I could not find JP Morgan Chase listed as one of them in any VC announcement. Tether is privately owned by 4 rich dudes. Could use the word dudes. Next one. Stable coins represent more value on the Ethereum blockchain than ETH itself. That's also false. by roughly adding up the top dozen stablecoins on CoinGecko. Ethereum stablecoin market cap is less than 150 billion. Compare this to ETH's market cap of 204 billion. JP Morgan and Citigroup basically own the New York Fed. Mostly false. There is no ownership in a corporate sense. While banks are required to their own shares of the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve answers to their board, which is directly accountable to Congress, and profits are never distributed to shareholders. It's a strange corporate structure, but that's government agencies for you. Many consider Congress to be bought and paid for by private interests, though, in the end. So that's why this only earns a rating of, quote, mostly false. All right. Any final thoughts from anyone? Okay. Well, I guess that's going to wrap it up for this edition. Stick around after the show as we continue the party in the hotel lobby. Don't forget to pick up your POAP. Get your POAP. That money stays in the Mavericks and it goes towards public funds at some point. And stick around for a bonus hour of popcorn right here on Discord. It's a fun place to let loose when the parents aren't watching on YouTube. Hi, Mom. On behalf of Ethfinance and EVMavericks, my name is JT. Cheers and big hugs from Kansas City.